Britain's Royal Navy has shadowed Russian vessels sailing through the English Channel in a two-day operation coordinated with NATO allies, the Navy announced on Friday. The operation comes as the military alliance steps up monitoring of Russian shipping amid concerns about Moscow's maritime activities near European waters. According to the Royal Navy, 2 patrol ships supported by a Wildcat helicopter were dispatched to track the Russian warship Boyki and an accompanying oil tanker, the MT General Skobelev, as they headed north through one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. The Navy said it tracked the Russian warship Boyki, described as a Steregushchiy-class corvette, during its transit through British waters. The accompanying tanker, MT General Skobelev, was also monitored throughout the passage. The Royal Navy said such monitoring helps protect national security and critical infrastructure like undersea cables. This type of shadowing mission represents routine operations that Britain's Navy conducts to maintain awareness of vessel movements through strategic waterways. After maintaining surveillance of the Russian vessels through British territorial waters and the English Channel, the Royal Navy handed over monitoring responsibilities to a NATO ally, according to the Navy's statement. This coordinated handoff reflects the alliance's integrated approach to maritime domain awareness, with different member nations taking responsibility for tracking vessels as they move through their respective areas of operation. The timing and coordination with NATO allies underscores the heightened vigilance that Western navies are maintaining regarding Russian naval movements, particularly as tensions remain elevated over the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The operation demonstrates the kind of alliance cooperation that has become standard practice as NATO monitors shipping activity in European waters. UK Defense Minister John Healey said the UK supported a French operation involving the tanker GRINCH as part of efforts targeting shadow fleet activity. That operation was described as part of ongoing efforts to address vessels suspected of evading international sanctions through what has become known as the Shadow Fleet, a network of tankers that Western officials say enables Russian oil exports despite sanctions. In a related development, the French Navy has diverted an oil tanker it detained on Thursday towards the port of Marseille-Fos for further investigation, according to a source close to the investigation who spoke to Reuters on Friday. The tanker, named GRINCH, was intercepted shortly after it crossed into the Mediterranean Sea through the Straits of Gibraltar. According to Reuters, the French Navy intercepted the GRINCH on suspicion of operating under a false flag and belonging to the Shadow Fleet that enables Russia to export oil despite international sanctions. The tanker had left Murmansk in early January, sailing from one of Russia's key Arctic ports before attempting to transit through European waters. European authorities detained and diverted the tanker for investigation amid wider efforts to disrupt suspected Shadow Fleet operations. The investigation will likely focus on determining the ownership of the vessel, the origin and destination of any cargo, and whether the tanker was operating under a legitimate flag. French authorities have not announced final conclusions regarding the vessel's status. The Shadow Fleet refers to a network of aging tankers, often operating with obscure ownership structures and flags of convenience, that Western officials say Russia has assembled to circumvent sanctions imposed following the invasion of Ukraine. According to Western officials, these vessels typically lack proper insurance from Western providers and often engage in ship-to-ship transfers at sea to disguise the origin of oil cargoes. By detaining the tanker and diverting it to Marseille-Fos for investigation, French authorities are signaling willingness to take direct action against vessels suspected of facilitating oil exports in violation of sanctions, according to analysts. The coordinated nature of these operations, with Britain supporting the French action involving the GRINCH and the Royal Navy conducting its own shadowing mission in the Channel, demonstrates increasing integration of European naval efforts regarding Russian maritime activities. NATO has made maritime security a focus as concerns have grown about Russian shipping activities and the continuing flow of oil revenue that Western officials say funds Moscow's military operations in Ukraine. The alliance's attention to these vessels reflects broader efforts to enforce economic measures against Russia. The Royal Navy said such monitoring helps protect national security and critical infrastructure like undersea cables. The English Channel and North Sea are crisscrossed by communications cables and energy pipelines that connect Britain to continental Europe, making the region an area of ongoing security attention. Concerns about undersea infrastructure increased following damage to the Nord Stream pipelines in September 2022. Since then, NATO navies have increased their monitoring of vessel movements, particularly those that transit through strategic waterways. The alliance has emphasized the importance of maritime domain awareness as part of its security posture. Russian naval movements through the English Channel, the Baltic Sea, and other European waters are tracked, as part of the alliance's effort to maintain awareness of activity in these regions. The Royal Navy's statement emphasized the routine nature of such monitoring while noting its importance for national security. Meanwhile, developments on the Ukrainian battlefield continue with reports of new weapon systems. Military Watch magazine claims video appears to show a jet-powered one-way drone striking a HIMARS launcher. This cannot be independently verified from the clip alone. The outlet describes it as one of the first recorded uses of such a system based on footage it reviewed. According to Military Watch, the video was captured by a reconnaissance drone and shows what the outlet describes as a HIMARS launcher being detected, tracked, and struck by a fast-moving drone. Military Watch reports that the aircraft appears to be a new type of single-use drone, distinct from earlier propeller-driven models reported in the conflict since 2022. The magazine's assessment has not been independently confirmed. HIMARS launchers have been among the weapons provided to Ukraine by the United States, capable of striking positions at significant ranges. If the capability described by Military Watch exists and can be deployed effectively, it could affect how such mobile systems operate, according to the outlet's analysis. Russia has relied heavily on single-use drones throughout the war, particularly what officials describe as Iranian-supplied Shahed 136 drones. According to Military Watch, those drones are slower, propeller-driven, and relatively inexpensive. The magazine notes that jet propulsion would allow significantly higher speed, reducing interception time compared to earlier designs. According to Military Watch, Iran's Shahed 238 was first reported in Ukraine in January 2024. However, the magazine reports that the Shahed 238 was not widely adopted, possibly due to cost compared to alternatives that could be produced in greater numbers. The aircraft described in the footage has what Military Watch calls a swept wing design and a small jet engine. Analysts cited by the magazine say it appears designed for precision strikes rather than the saturation attacks conducted with slower drones. Some reporting speculates about the model name, but officials have not publicly confirmed the system, and identification remains unconfirmed. Analysts cited by Military Watch say the drone described in the footage appears capable of pursuing moving targets, which would be significant when striking mobile systems. Such capability would suggest selective use rather than mass attacks, according to the magazine's analysis, reserving more expensive systems for specific targets. The emergence of this reported capability, if confirmed and deployed at scale, could affect Ukrainian operations, according to Military Watch. However, the cost of jet-powered drones compared to propeller-driven alternatives may limit deployment, the outlet notes. Independent verification of the system's capabilities and deployment status is not available. Military Watch's reporting relies on footage and analyst assessments that have not been independently confirmed. The magazine has published analysis of weapon systems throughout the conflict, though its assessments sometimes differ from official statements by the parties involved. As new systems are reported on the battlefield, drone attacks continue on both sides of the conflict. Regional officials in southern Russia said a drone strike caused damage and fires in the village of Nova Adagaya. Independent verification is limited, and each side disputes such claims. Such cross-border incidents have become a regular feature of the conflict, with both sides reporting attacks on territory controlled by the other. Ukrainian officials have reported large barrages in recent weeks. Ukraine's Air Force has listed totals that at times reach into the hundreds, according to official statements. Air defenses intercepted most, officials said, but several reached their targets. Power outages were reported across several regions as strikes continued against what officials describe as energy infrastructure. The scale of drone warfare in the Ukraine conflict has exceeded previous conflicts, with both sides deploying large numbers of unmanned aircraft for reconnaissance and strike missions. The continuous reports of new systems on both sides reflects the ongoing technological competition in the conflict. Reuters reported strikes disrupted power and water supplies on Kyiv's left bank, with officials reporting injuries and damage. In the early hours of January 20th, according to reports, Russia launched missile and drone attacks that affected electricity and water supplies in parts of the capital's eastern districts. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko confirmed that at least one person was injured as cold temperatures affected a city dealing with energy challenges. The combination of winter conditions and infrastructure damage creates difficult conditions for civilians who depend on heating systems powered by an electrical grid that has been targeted repeatedly. The left bank districts of Kyiv, home to a significant population before the war, have been targeted in recent Russian strikes, according to officials. These areas, like much of the capital, are experiencing what officials describe as challenging winter conditions since Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022. Explosions were first heard around 2 in the morning, according to journalists on the ground who reported blasts as air raid sirens sounded across the city. Almost simultaneously, Ukraine's Air Force issued warnings that ballistic missiles were targeting Kyiv, according to official statements, triggering alerts across the capital and surrounding regions. The alerts widened beyond Kyiv itself. Additional missile alerts were announced for Dnipro and Vinnytsia regions, according to Ukraine's military. Shortly afterwards, officials confirmed that Russia had launched MiG-31 bombers, aircraft capable of carrying Kinzhal missiles, weapons that officials say are designed to evade air defenses. As the city responded to the initial strikes, the attacks continued according to reports. Around 5 in the morning, a second wave of drones was detected approaching Kyiv, according to military statements. Missiles were again reported heading towards the capital shortly after 6:30 local time, extending the assault into morning hours. Earlier in the night, drone activity had already triggered air raid alerts in Kyiv and surrounding regions, according to officials. Similar alerts were reported over Odessa and nearby areas around 6 in the morning, according to Ukrainian military statements, indicating activity across multiple regions. Social media reported concerns about the strikes, with Telegram channels reporting bomber activity and missile preparations before the barrage began, according to posts reviewed by journalists. The reports added to concerns among civilians who have experienced repeated such attacks over nearly 3 years of conflict. The pattern of combined missile and drone attacks has become a standard approach in Russian strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure, according to military analysts. Drones force air defenses to respond, while faster missiles attempt to reach targets, according to descriptions of the tactic by Ukrainian officials. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky had predicted a major strike and announced that Ukraine's Air Force would adopt a new air defense approach in response to the continuing campaign. In a video address, Zelensky outlined changes to how Ukraine would organize its defensive capabilities. "A new day, air defense," Zelensky said. "There will be a new approach to how air defense is used by the Air Force. This concerns mobile fire groups, interceptor drones, and other short-range air defense assets. This system will be transformed." The president announced the appointment of a new deputy commander of the Air Force to lead the reorganization effort. Zelensky's announcement reflected the ongoing challenge Ukraine faces in defending against air attacks with available resources. Western allies have provided various air defense systems, but the scale of Russian attacks continues to strain capabilities, according to Ukrainian officials, particularly as strikes target energy infrastructure during winter. Ukraine's energy minister warned that Russia's campaign is focused on energy infrastructure, according to reports. Officials said potential targets include facilities connected to Ukraine's nuclear power stations, raising concerns about power availability as winter temperatures create challenging conditions for civilians. Those concerns were reinforced by Ukraine's military intelligence agency, which warned on January 17th that Moscow was planning to strike substations connected to Ukraine's 3 active nuclear plants in western and southern regions, according to the agency's statement. The aim, intelligence officials said, would be to disrupt heat and power distribution during winter. Nuclear power provides a significant portion of Ukraine's electricity, making the substations and transmission lines connected to these plants important infrastructure. While the plants themselves are subject to international attention regarding nuclear facilities, the supporting electrical infrastructure has been targeted by strikes, according to Ukrainian officials. Ukrainian officials have described this winter as challenging since the full-scale invasion began. The combination of accumulated damage to energy infrastructure, continued strikes, and seasonal heating demands has created conditions that test both infrastructure and the population's resilience. The residents of Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities have adapted to power disruptions, emergency heating arrangements, and the ongoing threat of air attacks over nearly 3 years of war. However, each winter brings renewed challenges as temperatures drop and energy demands increase while infrastructure continues to be damaged. International partners have provided generators, transformers, and other equipment to help Ukraine maintain its electrical grid, according to officials. The targeting of energy infrastructure represents what officials describe as a deliberate strategy affecting both military operations and civilian services. The naval operations conducted by Britain and France this week represent part of a broader Western effort to increase pressure on Russia through multiple channels simultaneously. While Ukraine defends against aerial attacks, Western navies are working to address Russian oil exports that officials say fund military operations. The Shadow Fleet has become a focus of this effort because Western officials describe it as an effective sanctions evasion mechanism. By operating tankers with obscure ownership outside normal maritime insurance frameworks, Russia has maintained oil export volumes despite sanctions designed to restrict revenues, according to Western assessments. The detention of the GRINCH and the coordinated British-French operations signal that European navies are prepared to take action against suspected Shadow Fleet vessels, according to officials. If sustained, such operations could complicate Russia's ability to move oil while evading sanctions, analysts say. The coordination between British and French naval forces demonstrates the integrated approach that NATO allies are taking toward maritime security challenges. The handoff of surveillance responsibility from the Royal Navy to a NATO ally as vessels transit through different national waters reflects alliance procedures for maintaining awareness of shipping activity. NATO has invested in maritime domain awareness capabilities, including monitoring and patrol assets dedicated to tracking shipping in European waters. These capabilities have become more prominent as concerns about Russian activities have grown, according to alliance statements. The alliance's focus on the Shadow Fleet represents an extension of maritime security concerns to include sanctions enforcement. By treating suspected Shadow Fleet vessels as security matters rather than simply commercial activity, NATO navies are supporting the broader effort to constrain Russian revenues, according to officials. The connection drawn by British officials between naval operations and efforts to address funds that support Russia's military reflects the integrated nature of Western strategy. Military assistance to Ukraine, economic sanctions on Russia, and naval operations against sanctions evasion serve related objectives, according to officials. The Shadow Fleet has enabled Russia to continue exporting oil at volumes that generate significant revenue annually, despite sanctions designed to restrict these flows, according to Western assessments. Oil and gas revenues remain a major funding source for the Russian government, making sanctions enforcement important to the broader effort, officials say. By detaining and investigating vessels suspected of Shadow Fleet operations, European authorities are attempting to raise the costs and risks of participating in sanctions evasion, according to analysts. If operators face increased likelihood of detention and investigation, the economic considerations of participating in such activity may shift. The developments of recent days illustrate how the Ukraine conflict involves multiple dimensions simultaneously. The physical battlefield where new weapon systems are reported, the aerial domain where missiles and drones target infrastructure, and the economic realm where Western navies address Russian shipping. Each dimension influences the others, according to analysts. Russian revenues fund military production. Western sanctions and naval operations attempt to reduce those revenues. Ukrainian air defenses, supported by Western equipment, attempt to intercept attacks. And new weapon systems continue to be reported as both sides seek advantages. The detention of the GRINCH and the Royal Navy's shadowing of Russian vessels represent actions in the economic dimension of the conflict. Combined with continued Western military assistance to Ukraine and the air defense changes announced by President Zelensky, these operations reflect the comprehensive approach that Western nations have adopted. As winter continues and the conflict approaches its third year, the patterns established in recent days are likely to persist, according to analysts. Russia will continue targeting Ukrainian infrastructure according to stated objectives. Ukraine will continue adapting its defensive strategies and relying on Western assistance. And Western navies will continue monitoring Russian shipping and taking action against suspected sanctions evasion. The Royal Navy's shadowing operation and France's detention of the GRINCH represent the naval dimension of sustained Western activity. Combined with the ongoing military assistance flowing to Ukraine and the reported evolution of weapon systems, these operations reflect the multidimensional nature of the conflict. The outcome remains uncertain, but the coordination demonstrated by British and French naval forces this week suggests continued Western attention to Russian maritime activities. The Shadow Fleet, infrastructure protection concerns, and conventional monitoring all receive attention from NATO navies working together to address the security challenges that officials say are posed by Russian activities in European waters and beyond.